You know that feeling when someone asks you for a favor and every cell in your body is screaming no, but your mouth says yes. According to psychology, you're not weak. Here's why you keep saying yes when you mean no. If you want to understand why you do what you do, subscribe now. New psychology videos drop every Tuesday and Friday, breaking down the patterns most people never recognize. Psychologist John Bowlby's attachment theory reveals something crucial. Children learn how love works by watching when they receive it and when they don't. If you grew up in an environment where approval came with conditions, where love felt like something you had to earn, your brain built a blueprint. Be helpful, you get warmth. Be needy, you get coldness. Developmental psychology shows that children in these environments develop what researchers call anxious attachment. You learned that your value wasn't inherent, it was conditional, based on performance, on being useful, on never being a burden. So now when someone asks for something, your brain doesn't just hear a request, it hears a test. Saying no feels like failing that test, like risking the rejection you learned to fear before you even had words for it. But here's where it gets more complicated. Neuroscience research from UCLA shows that people who can't say no have heightened activity in brain regions associated with social pain. When you imagine disappointing someone, your brain processes it similarly to physical pain, literally. Psychologists call this rejection sensitivity. Studies show this often develops in childhood, when emotional safety was inconsistent. Maybe you had a parent whose mood determined the household temperature, so your brain got really good at reading people, predicting their reactions, avoiding anything that might trigger withdrawal. Now, when someone asks for something and you want to say no, your brain doesn't just process potential disappointment, it processes potential abandonment. The same neural pathways that helped you survive an unpredictable childhood are now firing in your adult relationships. And let's be honest about something else. Research in self-concept development shows that people who can't say no often have what psychologists call external locus of self-worth. Translation: you feel valuable when others approve. You feel worthless when they don't. Psychologist Carl Rogers found that people who grew up with conditional positive regard, where acceptance depended on meeting others' standards, develop unstable self-worth. You can achieve incredible things, be competent, intelligent, successful, but your sense of okayness still depends on whether people are pleased with you. So saying yes isn't just about avoiding their disappointment, it's about securing your own sense of worth. Every yes is a transaction. You're trading your time, your energy, your boundaries for the feeling that you matter. But here's the part nobody talks about. When you say no, conflict might follow. And if you grew up in an environment where conflict meant danger, where raised voices led to scary outcomes, your nervous system learned something crucial. Conflict is a threat. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory explains this. When you even think about saying no, your nervous system can shift into a threat response. Research shows that children who grew up with volatile caregivers develop this pattern. Saying no wasn't just discouraged, it was genuinely unsafe. So you learned to read the room, sense what people wanted, give it to them before they even had to ask. That hypervigilance kept you safe then, but now it keeps you trapped in a pattern where avoiding conflict means losing yourself. And here's where it gets really painful. Psychologist Marsha Linehan's research on interpersonal effectiveness reveals something crucial. Boundaries aren't walls, they're information. They tell people where you end and they begin. But if you never learned that you're allowed to have boundaries, if your needs were consistently deprioritized, you don't even know where your boundaries should be. You've spent so long adapting to everyone else's needs that you've lost touch with your own. Studies show this creates what researchers call identity diffusion. You can describe what everyone around you needs, wants, prefers, but if someone asks what you need, that question feels almost impossible to answer, because you've learned that your role is to be flexible, accommodating, easy, the person who makes things work for everyone else. So what happens to all that unexpressed no? Research on emotional suppression shows that when you can't say no externally, you start saying it internally. Every yes you don't mean creates a small deposit in what psychologists call the resentment bank. You say yes to the extra project, resentment. You cancel your plans for someone else, resentment. Studies show it accumulates. It turns into bitterness, into passive aggression, into sudden explosions over minor things because the major things never got addressed. You might snap at someone over something small because you've said yes to 100 big things you didn't want to do. And here's the cruelest part. The people you're trying so hard not to disappoint often don't even realize you're suffering because you've gotten so good at hiding it. So what does all this mean? If you can't say no, you're not broken. You developed these patterns where they made sense. Understanding why you do this is the first step to change. Subscribe for more psychology that explains human behavior.